because this is the one place where the polls have already closed. Kentucky 6. It's in the Lexington area, bluegrass area. Andy Barr, been the congressman since 2012 against Amy McGrath, and this is a typical Democratic story. A Marine lieutenant colonel, combat pilot, the first female Marine combat pilot to fly F-18s. Now, there's just a small vote in, 600 votes to 400 votes, but the polls have closed in Kentucky 6. So that may give us our first indication. If Barr holds on, the red wall gets a little redder. If McGrath were to flip it, it's a Republican seat, the wave gets a little bluer.
Yeah, I just want to show our viewers 3 different House races that may tell us a little bit early on in the night, okay? Here in the Mid-South in Kentucky, Kentucky 6. If you've been watching the news over the past couple of days, this has come up a lot. This is Lexington. Early on the night, if Andy Barr, the Republican, is even or ahead, that would mean good news for Republicans. Conversely, if Amy McGrath has a lead in that Democratic district, it could mean good things for the blue wave, the blue trickle. We'll see what it is throughout the night. But the reason we're focused on that is because we will get early results from Kentucky coming up after the 7 o'clock hour here. Now, 2 more I want to show you here. This is Virginia 5. This is Denver Riggleman. He's the Republican against Leslie Cockburn. Why are we looking at this race here? Well, what is the strength for the president throughout the night? Go back 2 years. He won this district over Hillary Clinton easily by 11 points. Is he still that popular again this year, or has he increased his popularity? That's one of the things we're watching there in the Virginia 5 district there. Come on down to Georgia. A lot of attention given to the suburbs of Atlanta. This is Karen Handel. This is the old district for Newt Gingrich, by the way, and a tough battle with Lucy McBath, the Democrat. This is suburban voters in Atlanta. Northeast of the city. And why do we focus on that? Guys, I could show you countless districts across the country that are in a very similar situation, these toss-up races in the House. These are Americans who have a better than average income, $30,000 higher than the average. They have 80% of them have a college degree or better. And the race mix is interesting, 60% black, 15% African-American, about 12% Hispanic. And if that governor's race is important down there in Georgia and gets the attention that we think it's getting, that could have an impact on this race. So those are just 3 right now as we try and set the table for the evening. We're watching 70 House races all across the country. But these are the 29 that we think could flip red the blue or blue the red throughout the evening here. And you mentioned about these poll closings here. You're going to see a lot of data coming here in a moment. This is 7 o'clock, 36 minutes from now. Talked about Georgia, talked about Virginia, talked about Kentucky. At 7 o'clock, 35 minutes from now, you're going to get a call here really soon on this Senate race in Indiana that's getting a lot of attention. And when I come back in about 40 minutes, I'll show you how Republicans have set themselves up for a bit of a firewall in Indiana. We'll see whether or not that holds. Brett.
To you now.
There we go.
It is 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and polls have closed in half a dozen states, so the Fox News decision desk can now begin to project winners and losers in crucial elections across the country. Now, the 2 most closely watched races at this hour are the Indiana Senate race and the Georgia gubernatorial contest.
Democrat Stacey Abrams, to become the first African-American female governor in U.S. history, is in a very tight race tonight with Republican Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Too early to say who will win that contest to succeed term-limited governor in that state, Nathan Deal.
In Indiana, incumbent Democratic Senator Joe Donnelly trying to stave off a challenge from Republican businessman Mike Braun. That race also very close at the moment. Too early to declare a winner there.
But the Fox News decision desk can project, this is a big surprise, that independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who identifies as a Democratic socialist, will easily win a 3rd term by defeating Republican Lawrence Zupan. Sanders unsuccessfully challenged Hillary Clinton back in 2016, as you all well remember, in the presidential primaries. And some expect that Bernie Sanders may be on the list again in 2020.
And Clinton's running mate in 2016, Democratic Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, will win a 2nd term tonight by beating Republican challenger Corey Stewart, according to our Fox News voter analysis, and the raw vote total is starting to come in.
So we can also now project that Republican South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster will win his race against Democrat James Smith.
Now, remember, the 2 overarching questions of the night are whether Democrats can take control of the House and whether Republicans can keep control of the Senate. It's obviously too early to make those all-important projections. We're also watching governor's races around the country that will have a big impact on 2020 as well. Let's go back upstairs to the data deck where Bill Hemmer is standing by.
Hey, Brett.
Touchscreen.
Yeah, Brett, Martha, good evening yet again. I'm going to show our viewers right now. We'll take you into Indiana because we're just getting a little bit of results now, and you're going to see the states start to fill in here. Vermont, the independent light shade of blue, a little bit of blue here in Virginia. Doesn't mean a whole lot right now, so we'll gauge it throughout the night and let you know as we know how to interpret these results. But I'll go into Indiana right now because it's starting to get a little bit of red as Republican, blue as Democrat. Joe Donnelly against the Republican, Mike Braun, the businessman. A little bit of 96,000 to 64,000 votes coming in. This is what you always watch in Indiana. This is Marion County, Indianapolis. Far too early for any results to come back in, but we'll watch that throughout the evening and try to give you a bit of a projection. I think based on history, the best way to understand this matchup here was Joe Donnelly back in 2012. He won his Senate race by 6 points. But if you watch here now at the presidential level to see what Donald Trump did just 2 years ago, an easy winner all over the state of Indiana, beat Hillary Clinton by 20 points. So we'll see what sort of metric we get on that throughout the night. The next closing's coming up at about 7:30. And I think one thing to really key in on is the Senate race in West Virginia. I'll take you there right now. The Democrat is Joe Manchin up against the Republican Patrick Morrisey, the AG there. Joe Manchin was a popular Democratic governor in that state. He voted against Brett Kavanaugh, reversed that. He voted against the tax bill. He voted for Brett Kavanaugh just about a month ago. And this was Manchin's result in 2012. A lot of blue all over West Virginia. But if you come back to the presidential level, 2 years ago, you see what the president did there. That is strong popularity in the Mountaineer state, getting nearly 70% of the vote in West Virginia. So quickly here on the closing map, polling's coming up in about 21 minutes. Talk about West Virginia, talk about North Carolina, talk about Ohio as we go throughout the night. Brett, Martha, back to you.
Welcome back to America's election headquarters, and it's another countdown. It's really countdowns all night. Every half hour till we get to 9. And there's the next poll closing.
Here we go. 7:30 now, and polls have just closed in 3 more states, including 2 of national interest in this election, West Virginia and Ohio.
In West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin is trying to fend off a challenge by Republican Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. It's too early to declare a winner in that race at this hour.
Let's take a look at Ohio, the governor's race there. Former Republican Senator Mike DeWine locked in a very tight race right now with Democrat Richard Cordray, who served as President Obama's first director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We don't have enough data yet there to project a winner in terms of who's going to succeed Governor John Kasich.
Also in Ohio, the Democrat who succeeded DeWine in the Senate 12 years ago. Sherrod Brown is currently ahead of his Republican challenger, Congressman Jim Renacci, although Fox is not yet ready to make a projection there. You know, I do want to put up this one race. We've been watching Kentucky 6, and this is Andy Barr with a third-term incumbent up against Amy McGrath, the Democrat. And right now, it's a Democrat plus, what is that, 6, almost 6? That is interesting, as you see the percentages coming in there. More than 40% in. The fact that she's leading at this point in that bellwether race in Kentucky could be an indication that Democrats may be having a pretty good night. Let's get a check on some of the key race results coming in right now. One of the most interesting House races we've been watching, Kentucky 6. Let's head upstairs to our newsroom and Harris Faulkner. Harris.
Oh, let me tell you with the race tracker what Kentucky 6 has been doing. Can you see it up here? It's in a light blue right now, which means that Democrats are seeing some progress as those votes are being counted. But do you know that it has switched back and forth 4 or 5 times between blue and red, or that light red color? So what does that mean? That means that Andy Barr, who's the incumbent Republican there, is in a big battle. Remember, this is the 50-yard line in this. The yellow matches my dress. That means that these are in the greatest amount of play. As we fan out, Virginia 2 is another one. And let me tell you why this is so important. That is Scott Taylor's district. It's Virginia Beach. It's middle-class burbs. It's a place where Democrats were hoping to set a trend tonight if they could pick up one of those key Virginia districts and set a bellwether trend. Virginia 7 is a little bit different. That's an urban area, including Richmond. That's Republican Dave Bratt's seat. That's moving closer now away from that 50-yard line. So more votes are counted, but more importantly, more votes in the counties and areas that support Dave Bratt are being counted. So as they get close to the Crimson area over here, closer to being called and away from this line, that's what we're watching. Virginia 10's not up here yet. But let me tell you about Virginia 10 and why it's so important. It's a swing district, and I heard you guys talking about this. Washington Suburbs, District 10. It's upscale. If Democrats can pull a Virginia 10 district, if it ends up on their side of the board for much of the night and away from this play line, this too close to call line, that could be a bellwether for how Democrats do in upscale suburbs, places like Minnesota 3rd District and other areas that we're watching tonight. So remember, if you just turn off the sound of my voice and you only look at the board, you can tell that there's a battle going on right now for Virginia 2 and Kentucky 6. And we know that those are important areas. Democrats think they can start a blue wave with some of those Virginia districts. But it could be a big block tonight for Republicans. Next time I see you, I'll go through the Senate races. But right now, a lot of the action is on this side of the House. Real quickly, you've got North Carolina 9, Mecklenburg County there. It's moving closer to the Crimson line. Two things in play there. Not just how many votes or the percentage that have been counted, but who likes Republicans there, turning that a darker shade of red. Also, Ohio 1, we're watching that. Back to you guys.
Okay, Harris, thank you.
Yeah,
We've got
sure.
up on the board here these Virginia races and Kentucky, and we looked at them early and knew early that they were going to be kind of bellwethers. It looks like Barbara Comstock, the incumbent Republican, is in trouble in Virginia 10, and Jennifer Wexton, a state senator, looks in position to pull that out. Remember, Virginia is purple, but it's a little bit bluish purple in recent years. It is 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and polls have just closed. 16 more states as well as Washington, D.C., including 5 with highly competitive elections that will help determine the control of the U.S. Senate. Missouri, Tennessee, New Jersey, Mississippi, and Florida, which also, of course, has a crucial gubernatorial election.
Yeah, one of the closest of these Senate races, as I said a moment ago, has clearly been Missouri, where Democratic incumbent Claire McCaskill is fighting to hang on at this point against challenger Josh Hawley, the state's attorney general. Way too close to call this, and very early in the game as we wait to get some numbers up on the board as that just closes. And Missouri, as Brett pointed out earlier, does not do any early voting. And a pickup by Hawley would give Republicans a crucial plus in the Senate, where their razor-thin majority currently stands at 51-49. The president has said that if someone gets a cold or sneezes, he loses his majority in the Senate, and he's hoping very much that he can expand that tonight. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, another opportunity for a Republican pickup is in Florida, where Republican Governor Rick Scott is trying to oust Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson. The Fox News decision desk does not have enough data yet to project a winner in that race.
Florida, take a look at this one. Too early to say whether Democrat Andrew Gillum, the mayor of Tallahassee, will defeat Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis to replace the term-limited GOP Governor Rick Scott, who, as we just mentioned, is running for the Senate.
And speaking of running for the Senate, Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee currently has a lead over Democrat Phil Bredesen, a former governor, to replace retiring GOP Senator Bob Corker, but it's too soon to project a winner in that race.
Also too soon to call, I should say, is New Jersey, where incumbent Democratic Senator Robert Menendez vying with Republican businessman there, Bob Hugin.
And then there's the special election in Mississippi, which actually may not be settled tonight. That's because no fewer than 4 candidates are competing in a jungle primary. If no candidate receives more than 50% of the vote in Mississippi tonight, then the top 2 finishers, and you're likely looking at them there, advance to a runoff election November 27th, 5 days after Thanksgiving. And we should point out there's a scenario where that takes us to the control of the U.S. Senate. We'll talk about that in a minute.
So, and now a race call in Illinois in the gubernatorial contest. Democratic billionaire J.B. Pritzker will unseat Republican Governor Bruce Rauner to become the richest governor, actually, in U.S. history. So a gubernatorial pickup for the Democrats in Illinois is one that we can call.
Unsurprisingly, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, a liberal Democrat, will win a second term in Massachusetts, although she's already considering a presidential run in 2020. Warren defeats Republican Jeff Deal, a state lawmaker, and obviously we saw the DNA stuff earlier a couple weeks ago.
And in Pennsylvania, Democratic Senator Bob Casey will win a third term by defeating Republican Congressman there, Lou Barletta.
In Connecticut, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy will win a second term by defeating Republican Matthew Corey.
We should also mention that the polls are now closed in 50% of congressional districts across the country, which means that we are going to start getting some early indications in terms of which party will control the House of Representatives.
Tucker, as always, thank you. We're going to make a call
Thank
here.
you.
Yep, the Fox News decision desk can now project that the incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, as expected, will win a third term by defeating Republican Congressman Jim Renacci. This has always been, Sherrod Brown's race to lose, essentially, and he appears to be doing well tonight.
Yeah, he's going to win, and he calls himself a progressive populist. Kentucky 6 has turned around now. Incumbent Republican Andy Barr, three-term incumbent, now up in that race with 84% in over Amy McGrath, a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, one of the first fighter pilots, female fighter pilots. Let's look at the Virginia races. Congressional District 2, Scott Taylor, that's 63% in, slight lead. The 7th Congressional District, this is Dave Bratt, the incumbent. Remember, he was the giant killer who in the primary took down the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor. He is slightly ahead of the Democrat there, Spanberger. But this could be the first flip of the night. We may be ready for a call, and that is Virginia 10. And that is the Democrat Jennifer Wexton, who's a state senator, up big with 67% over Republican incumbent Barbara Comstock, who is a really good retail campaigner. She was in a district that kind of shifted, as I mentioned before, to a little bit more bluish purple. So she was facing an uphill battle. But those early states, the Kentucky 6 is turning around with 84% in. We're watching those. Let's head upstairs to Bill Hemmer with Martha at the data.
Hello there. We are up here on the terrace now, taking a look at what Bill has on the billboard for us right now.
Yeah, we got a lot to show, too.
Yeah,
Brett, you're just talking about a lot of these races right now. You're talking about the Kentucky race, a few in Virginia. Why don't we just go ahead and dial in on these House races now? This is something that's got a lot of attention right now in Kentucky 6. And, Martha, you've been watching this as well. Look, Andy Barr has a slight lead. If he keeps it close or even wins, it's really good news for Republicans. Heavily Democratic district. She's a first-time candidate, but right now with 85% of the vote in, it looks good for the Republicans. Let's see where the rest of the votes come in there in Kentucky 6. We put a lot of focus on Virginia, and for good reason. Brett, you mentioned it a moment ago. In Virginia 10, it looks like Barbara Comstock will lose her bid for a re-election there in a tough battle with Jennifer Wexton. That's a changing district in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
However, if we pop down here to the southern part of the state, this is good news for Denver Riggleman right now. He's got about a 7-point advantage right now against the Democratic challenger, and you mentioned Virginia 7 as well. Brett, you said he's the giant killer. Right now, about 20% of the vote is still outstanding, but he's hanging on right there.
Dave Bratt unseated Eric Cantor, Tea Party candidate, one of the early people in that wave, and now he's trying to hold on to his own seat, so we'll see where that goes.
I'll tell you, a couple races in Ohio that I find fascinating. I'll take you in right now in Ohio. Remember 3 months ago when the eyes of the political world were focused on Ohio District 12? Martha, this is Columbus. Yeah. It's suburban. It goes out to a rural area. It's a developing part of America that seems to be growing every year. The Democrat, Danny O'Connor, is now beating Troy Balderson by about 6 points. Got a lot of votes to come in right now. Total vote difference is 7,000, but you had about 200,000 3 months ago in August when they had that special election. So we got a ways to go, but right now it looks decent for the Democrat. Here's why I think this race is so important now. See what President Trump did 2 years ago? In this very district, he won it by 12 points. Now, you think about who these voters are, and the census data will tell you These are people who live above the national average by $10,000 a household. They've got about 70% have a college education or better. And look at the race, 85% white. These are white suburban Americans, well-educated, who have done very well under this economy over the past 2 years. And right now, they appear to be turning against the Republicans.
I mean, that's exactly the kind of area where you're looking at those white college-educated women, in many cases, that the president perhaps has felt slipping away a little bit. He's talked a lot in recent advertising and appearances in the rallies about how much security matters to women in America, trying to sell them on the issue of the wall, trying to sell them that the caravan is a scary thing. And those are exactly the kind of areas that he was working to hold on to.
And a lot of examples all across the country we're going to watch throughout the night, especially the suburbs of Chicago. Take you down to Florida real quick here. Just this is I-4 corridor. We always think about this during national elections, and yet being in a midterm right now, this is Tampa, it's Orlando, it's Daytona Beach. Right now, the Republicans hanging on with a good percentage of vote on there. Florida 16 down around Sarasota. Again, with 90% of the vote counted, Republicans are hanging on there as well. So you're seeing some bright spots for the GOP. Then you see some spots of concern. And you think about that 23 vote margin in the House right now. And we're going to be going through this as the night goes on, and we'll see whether or not.
It raises a lot of questions about whether there's a blue wave, red wave, or whether there's not really a wave, whether we see a lot of splits in these areas like Ohio and Florida. And we were just talking about how you could potentially see a split between the governor's race and the Senate race in Florida, which leaves you with something looking a lot like Florida, right?
And a hanging chad. Thank you, Martha.
All right, we'll send it back down to you guys.
Remember that. Tallahassee, 40 days and 40 nights. Listen, Florida is really a key battleground, no matter how you look at it. The governor's race in the Sunshine State, Tallahassee mayor, as we talked about, Democrat Andrew Gillum facing off against Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Okay, Phil, thanks. Tell him to change the channel down there. We've got a couple calls to make. On the House side, the Associated Press is calling the race in Florida 27 for Donna Shalala. You may remember she's the former Health and Human Services Secretary for President Clinton, former University of Miami president. This was a tight race against Maria Salazar, a Cuban-American journalist. Shalala, not considered the best campaigner there, and it was really tight throughout. This is a gain for the House Democrats. So now you have +2 for the Democrats as they need to get +23. Also, Florida 6, we are calling for, the Associated Press calling for Mike Waltz, former Special Forces commander. He's a Republican defeating Nancy Soderberg, the Democrat. The Democrats spent a lot of money on that race. Mike Waltz pulling that out in Florida 6. All right, let's go back, if we can, to that Florida governor's race and put up the screen. This obviously is a key race. Andrew Gillum is the Tallahassee mayor against Ron DeSantis, congressman, and now this is a very, very tight race, although it has shifted in the past hour or so. We have Ron DeSantis with 50 straight up and Andrew Gillum at 48.8. Britt, what are you looking at there?
Well, the question is how much is in, and
93%.
93%.
That's probably 93% of precincts. Right?
Yeah, so Broward County is in, we're told.
Right.
So 93%.
That looks a lot
you've
better
got
for
like
DeSantis than it did a little while ago.
The Panhandle is a late
late
return.
Late return, right?
So it should be coming in.
Panhandle will almost certainly help DeSantis.
Republican.
Republican, yeah. So that he might pull that out. Be a great relief to Mr. Trump, I would say.
I want to interrupt you for a second. Associated Press calling Kentucky 6 for incumbent Andy Barr. So he will become a fourth-term incumbent. We are putting the check mark next to Andy Barr. That is a huge, huge development in the early races. Again, as we were talking early on, this was a bellwether, and Amy McGrath ran a great race, but she will go down to Andy Barr, who pulls this out in Kentucky, which is a huge deal. And I want to update the other toss-up states that we're looking at with Claire McCaskill in Missouri. That's early. We are looking, though, very closely at Indiana, 49% in. And you see Mike Braun starting to separate there. 53.8% to Joe Donnelly's 42%. We're saying it's too close to call. but Republicans there in Indiana are feeling confident about Mike Braun.
There we go.
It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and polls have just closed in 14 more states, including Arizona, Texas, and North Dakota. Each of those will have a major impact on whether Republicans retain control of the U.S. Senate.
It will not come as a surprise to you that Arizona is too early to say whether Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally will beat Democratic Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema to succeed retiring GOP Senator Jeff Flake.
Also too early to project a winner in Texas. This race obviously getting a lot of attention. Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke trying to unseat incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz in what has become the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. At the moment, Cruz has a very slight lead.
O'Rourke has a very slight lead, it looks like.
Oh, I think this is using voter analysis and raw vote total.
Putting it all together. It's pretty close, anyway, in Texas at this point. And in North Dakota, we are waiting for more data to project where we are in this race with the incumbent Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp and her Republican challenger, Congressman Kevin Cramer. As of the poll closing, Cramer is in the lead right now. A pretty sizable lead, but we've only got 4% of the vote in right there.
The other hotly contested race we're watching at this hour in Wisconsin, incumbent Republican Governor Scott Walker currently trailing Democrat Tony Evers, the state's education superintendent. Too early to make a call there.
Let's go to New York for a moment. Governor Andrew Cuomo, who defeated Sex and the City actress Cynthia Nixon 7 weeks ago in the Democratic primary, today wins a third term by beating handily Republican Mark Molinaro.
Also in New York, Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand will win re-election to a second full term by defeating Republican Shelley Farley. She's being talked about as a possible presidential candidate, by the way.
And in one of the two Senate races in Minnesota today, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar will win a third term by beating GOP state lawmaker Jim Newberger. She's also discussed as a possible 2020 Democrat candidate.
In the other Minnesota Senate race, Democratic Senator Tina Smith will win election to fill the remainder of Senator Al Franken's term until January 2021. She defeated the state senator Karen Hawley.
And let's look at Wisconsin, where Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin will win a second term. She has defeated GOP State Senator Leah Vukmir.
Speaking of the Senate, we have a major race call to make right now. First in New Jersey, the Fox News decision desk can now project Democratic Senator Robert Menendez will win re-election by defeating Republican businessman Bob Hugin. Although some Republicans had viewed Menendez as very vulnerable due to that federal corruption trial 2017, the 12-year Senate veteran really never trailed Hugin, even though it was called a toss-up by Cook Political Report. He is going to go on and win.
And we have another major race call to make tonight in the Tennessee Senate race. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn will defeat former Democratic Governor Phil Bredesen to replace retiring GOP Senator Bob Corker. Although Blackburn spent all summer trailing Bredesen in the polls, she closed the gap. She was a tireless campaigner in this race and took the lead about a month ago.
I'm just going to interrupt you. We're going to call Joe Manchin winning West Virginia Senate over Patrick Morrissey. There was some thought that Patrick Morrissey could close the gap here, but Joe Manchin, longtime incumbent West Virginia senator, voted for Kavanaugh, is going to return to the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, the Kavanaugh vote, I think, without a doubt, helped him there.
We're making a race call. Indiana, Mike Braun, the Republican, will defeat incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly. This is a huge win for the Republicans. This is a pickup for the Republicans, taking down incumbent Donnelly, who Democrats really believed was in good shape heading into Election Day. Mike Braun, you remember President Trump went to Indiana a few times, but he closed his campaign in Indiana with a big election night preview there. Mike Braun, the businessman, defeating the incumbent Joe Donnelly. An election alert now, an update on some of the tight races. Here is the governor's race in Florida we've been talking about. 72,000 plus separate Ron DeSantis from Andrew Gillum. As you see, 93%. It's still, that's the vote, the percentage of vote in. Too close to call for us. Then you look at the Senate race, also too close to call. 68,000 separating Rick Scott and Bill Nelson, the incumbent Democrat. Also, let's take a look at Kyrsten Sinema. This is too early. Based on our voter analysis, we don't even have the raw vote total in there. We do have some calls to make, though. Obviously, we just called Indiana Senate for Mike Braun. And we have some governor's races to call as well. In Vermont, Phil Scott will win for the Republican, will defeat the Democrat in Vermont, traditionally skewing Democrat in that state. Also, the Republican winning in Oklahoma with a big win for Kevin Stitt, following up on Mary Fallon, the incumbent Republican. And Rhode Island, the Democrat Gina Raimondo will win in Rhode Island's governor's race.
Sarah.
We have a major race projection to make right now in that so-called jungle primary in Mississippi's special Senate election. Fox News Decision Desk can now project that none of the four candidates will win tonight because none will get 50% of the vote. So what does that mean? The top two finishers, you're looking at it right there, Republican incumbent Cindy Hyde-Smith and Democratic challenger Mike Espy, will face each other in a runoff election November 27th. It's early here, 10% in. You've got 43% to 39%. Bottom line is neither one will get to 50%. There is a scenario. It might not happen now with Joe Donnelly going down in Indiana, but the scenario would be for Democrats to take control, that they would win enough to have a 50-50 tie, and then with Mississippi hanging out there. Okay, we got to run here, Britt. I'll come back to this. We are now ready to make one of the biggest calls of the night. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives for the first time in 8 years, dealing a major setback to President Trump's legislative agenda, giving fresh hope to liberals who want to investigate, as we just talked about, possibly even impeach the president. Democrats now will control the Senate.
Although the exact size of
the House, I'm sorry, the House.
Exact size of this, there's a look at the balance of power right now. The majority size is not clear yet. It could be a very slim margin. Democrats will soon have to decide whether they will restore Nancy Pelosi to her old job as Speaker of the House. I think there were 30-some candidates who ran on saying that they would not try to put Nancy Pelosi back in the Speaker's position. She's made it very clear that she thought that they would win and that she would indeed take that Speaker role again. Democrats control the House. The reason we can make that call is the voter analysis data plus the raw total, looking at the numbers, the decision desk making that call. So it is 10 p.m. here on the East Coast. Polls have closed in another 4 states, including Nevada, Montana, both of which will figure prominently, obviously, into determining which party will control the Senate. But we do have a race call. Yes, we do, and it's in the state of Utah. It's not a surprise, but the Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney will defeat Democratic opponent Jenny Wilson to succeed retiring GOP Senator Orrin Hatch. And it should be interesting to see Senator Romney in Washington. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's something we should get some thoughts on because Jeff Flake is gone. John McCain, obviously, has passed. Bob Corker is no longer in office. But perhaps Mitt Romney might be a little bit of a thorn occasionally in the president's side. We'll see. In the U.S. Senate. We're waiting for more data from Montana before projecting who will win the battle between incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester and Republican challenger Matt Rosendale, the state auditor. President Trump, of course, has made it his mission to try to defeat Tester, who helped torpedo the president's nomination of White House physician Ronnie Jackson to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs. At this moment, we have Tester with a lead in this race, but obviously we're just closing there. Take a look at Nevada, where we have Democratic Congresswoman Jackie Rosen. She's got a slight lead over the incumbent Republican Senator Dean Heller. Too early to declare a winner in that race. Obviously, it was a Hillary Clinton win state in Nevada, so he is a Republican, the only one Republican defending a state where Hillary won. Also, too early to project a winner in Nevada's gubernatorial election, which pits Republican Attorney General Adam Laxalt against Democrat Steve Sisolak, chairman of the Clark County Commission, in a battle to succeed term-limited GOP Governor Brian Sandoval. We're also watching the gubernatorial election in Iowa. Incumbent Republican Governor Kim Reynolds being challenged by Democratic lawyer Fred Hubbell. Too early to call that race as well. Major race call to make, though, in North Dakota. As we take a look, the Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Republican Congressman Kevin Cramer will unseat one-term Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp, scoring a crucial Senate pickup for the GOP. Heitkamp, who had long struggled against Cramer in this reliably red state, sealed her political fate last month when she voted against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. That may have been one of the major factors for her. Obviously, there's a lot of economic factors at play in North Dakota as well. Kevin Cramer's got a long history there, as Carl was just talking about. Just think about this. Now, this is 2 incumbent Democrats taken down, Joe Donnelly
and Heidi Heitkamp. Not a surprise in North Dakota, Britt. Surprise for some in Indiana, but now you are ticking up to the Senate, and Democrats need to pick up more because Republicans have added to their total. One place did flip blue, and that is we're making the call for the Democrats to control the U.S. House of Representatives. Why are we making that call? Why, with all of those white seats still out there and our net gain in the House not at 23, why are we making that call? Here to explain is Chris Stirewalt, out of the jail of the decision desk.
I feel like I've been summoned to the principal's office.
Why are we making that call?
Well, we're just that good. I don't mean to brag, but our Fox News voter analysis and what we're now starting to see as the House races count later and as they come in, because remember, with these House races, you don't have the kind of forecast you do on the Senate level. So it takes longer for them to start to catch up, but you're starting to see them catch up. And we said all along, look at that 6th district in Kentucky. That was a good one to watch. And the very fact that that race was as close as it was told us, and told me at least, that the Democrats are getting the kind of numbers they need. They had no business doing so well in a district like that. And now we're starting to see 2nd District of Kansas, again, a place that Republicans should be in, have no trouble. They're struggling. And as we look around the bend, as we go around the country, you will see more and more Democratic seats rack up. And at some point this evening, we're going to be able to tell you by how many seats the Democrats will take their majority. And that will have a lot to do with what they do once they get there.
Just throw it out there.
It's +7 right now, so where's it going to go?
I'm not telling. I'm not saying it, but I'm telling you we will know. We will be able to tell you tonight before every race is called
Not before
what
Britt
kind of margin
Hume
we're
is
looking
betting.
at. What's that?
Not before Britt Hume and his betting machine.
I don't want to tangle with Britt Hume's betting machine. I don't know, and he's probably got horse races on there and everything. All I know is the Fox News voter analysis is humming like it's just a Testarossa Ferrari. I'm so happy the way it's turning out, and we're really proud of the team.
So, Chris, while we've got you, 2 pickups, obviously, for the Senate for Republicans, and Florida is also, at this point, looking good for them. A quick thought on what Florida looks like and what you're waiting for, and Missouri as well.
Well, we will be counting, as I said, we'll be counting in Florida for a long time. Claire McCaskill is a tough out. The fundamentals, the structure of the state has significant advantage for Hawley. We know that. We know this is a very Republican state, but she is a very tough out. I know a couple things I'm not going to tell you right now, and I would say we are watching that state as closely as anything else, because this, if Hawley wins there, right? If he wins there, then it closes the door on any kind of Democratic hope to take the Senate and sets the stage for what a lot of people thought we were going to end up with tonight, which is a split decision. Democrats take control of the House and Republicans see gains in the Senate.
We'll get back to the election. That was an interesting discussion. We have a call to make, and that is in Kansas for Kansas governor.
Chris Kobach has lost that race. He's at 40%. Laura Kelly has picked it up 51%. This is a Democrat governor race for Kansas. Obviously, Chris Kobach ran into a difficult situation there. So we have quite a bit of big news to report. We can call now that the Texas race will go to Ted Cruz, the incumbent Republican. That also gives us the ability to call the Senate for Republicans. They will retain the Senate with a number of big wins so far tonight, and some still out there.
So Fox News can project that Republicans will retain control in the U.S. Senate. We do not know yet by how many. Right now, it's +2 for the Republicans, but that Ted Cruz win over Beto O'Rourke, significant. It was tight at the end, but now Cruz will be heading back to Washington, and Republicans will remain in the majority. There are still some races out there where they could pick up even more, including Florida, which has Rick Scott up slightly down there against Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson.
2 years from now.
We are having split government, according to the Fox News desk.
Yes, let me amend my verb.
Yes. Otherwise, Stirewalt will be back out here telling us. We have a couple race calls to make. First, in Colorado, Democratic Congressman Jared Polis becomes the first openly gay man to win a gubernatorial election in the U.S. history by defeating GOP Treasurer Walker Stapleton to succeed term-limited Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper, who's also talked about possibly running for president. In New Hampshire, Republican Governor Chris Sununu will win a second term by defeating Democrat Molly Kelly. New Hampshire, obviously very important when it comes to 2020. Now Republicans in control in Vermont, in New Hampshire, in Massachusetts. It's really interesting to look.
Florida.
And possibly Florida. Thank you. We've got a call to make in a governor's race that's important, and that is in Ohio. Fox News can now project that Mike DeWine will win in Ohio. The Republican holding off a challenge from the Democrat, Richard Cordray. Cordray, of course, was the head of the Consumer Protection Division under President Obama. Now DeWine, who has served as Ohio's Attorney General since 2010. He was a U.S. Senator before losing to Sherrod Brown. But a big win in Ohio governor's race. This is to fill John Kasich's seat. And it also means a lot in 2020. Think about this. If a Republican controls Ohio and a Republican controls potentially Florida, that means a lot for a prospective candidate and President Donald Trump for re-election. Let's update a couple of other governor's races. Look at the numbers here. We haven't made a call in Georgia. Stacey Abrams trailing, as Laura mentioned, Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State there, 70% of the vote in. And we are going to be looking at this very closely. And there you see it ticking down as well. Iowa governor right now early, 15% in. The Democrat Fred Hubble over the incumbent Kim Reynolds. And obviously, Iowa will play a significant role in the presidential election as well. Big call to make. This one, Florida governor. Ron DeSantis will win the Florida governor's race against Andrew Gillum. Mayor Gillum is speaking right now, conceding to DeSantis a hard-fought race. Let's listen in.
11 o'clock on the East Coast, and polls are now closed in 49 of the 50 states, as well as 434 of the 435 congressional districts across this nation. Of the 5 states where polls have just closed, California has, of course, the most elections, including 2 of very big national interest.
The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that California Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, will defeat Republican John Cox in the race to succeed term-limited Democratic incumbent Governor Jerry Brown.
Fox can also project that California Senator Dianne Feinstein will defeat Senator Kevin DeLeon, a fellow Democrat who had placed second to Feinstein in the state's nonpartisan jungle primary back in June. Feinstein, as the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, came under fire in September, as you all remember, for the handling of Brett Kavanaugh's Senate court nomination hearings. Another Democrat on that committee, Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono, will also win re-election tonight, defeating Republican challenger Ron Curtis, according to the Fox News Decision Desk. Let's go to Washington State now, where incumbent Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell will win a 4th term by defeating Republican Susan Hutchinson there. And the Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Idaho Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, a Republican, will defeat Democrat Paulette Jordan in the race to succeed retiring GOP Governor Butch Otter. Fox can also now project that Hawaii Governor David Ige, a Democrat, will win a second term by defeating Republican Andrea Tupola. And in the Oregon gubernatorial race, it's too early to say whether incumbent Democratic Governor Kate Brown will stave off a challenge from Republican Newt Buehler, a state lawmaker. But as you look at the balance of power tonight, we've made the 2 biggest calls already. The U.S. House of Representatives, we've projected, will go to Democrats' control, and the Senate will go to the Republicans. They will control. We just don't know yet, Martha, how many. It's possible that +2 could get up to +4 before the end of the night. Missouri, and we wait for Florida, which could potentially put it there, but we'll see where it goes. Bill Hemmer has some more for us up there, up in the big terrace.
You guys have 30 minutes? Because there is it possible?
Take it off.
I mean, Brett and Martha, the amount of information that has come in over the past 60 minutes is really phenomenal. And let me just wind this thing up and let's see how far we can go, okay? What races have we not called so far? This is Missouri. Josh Hawley and Claire McCaskill, about a 10-point difference right now. You see all that red? That's all Republican. You see the blue specks there? That's Kansas City. That's Columbia, where the president was the other day. And this is St. Louis and East St. Louis over here. A lot of votes out there in St. Louis have not yet come in, so can't yet make a call. But it was Thursday of this past week where the president went to, well, this is Boone County in the central part of the state. And you ask yourself, why would you go there? 2 years ago, Boone County was as blue as you can get, Missouri. But you see all these rural counties. Watch these numbers for Trump go up. You see 72, 73. You see the numbers change, 76, 71.9%. Other one down here. He was driving up that vote in Missouri, and we'll see whether or not as more of these rural counties come in as to whether or not that was a winning strategy. Right now, it looks like it. In the show me state. So we'll watch that for a little bit more. I know you were talking a moment ago about Georgia. Let's pop down here and see what's going on with this governor's race with Stacey Abrams. You mentioned Fulton County, and you also talked about DeKalb and Gwinnett. Let's go in there a second right here. Brian, come with me here. This is Fulton County right in the middle. You see where the hesitation is? You've only got 50% of the vote in so far in Fulton County. We can pop over here to the east of DeKalb County. Well, you're almost full at 92%. Gwinnett County, a lot of votes in Gwinnett. You're about 82%. So that gives us a little bit of pause here before we call that governor's race. You just called Ohio. You called Florida. Georgia is out there. Right now, the Republicans leading. Just think about that. Now, at the beginning of the night, who would have thought, or could you get 3 for 3 in 3 of the most critical governor races, especially in Florida and Ohio, when you're talking about redistricting and setting things up for 2020? All that right now is thrown into this mix to try and understand where the votes have gone tonight and where they have not gone. Now, how do you lose the House? Let's take a look at that as to where Democrats were picking up votes tonight. We'll start in Virginia. Brett, Martha, all of our colleagues live in Washington, so what do they think about? They think about what's familiar to them, right? So here it is in Virginia now. This one, Barbara Comstock could not defend herself against Jennifer Wexton. That went that way, toward blue, toward the Democrats. Down here, Scott Taylor was unable to come back against his Democratic opponent. That was a flip as well. I've been watching this Dave Bratt match all night right here at 99% of the vote with Abigail Spanberger. That's pretty close, right? 1892, the difference, and we'll see in the end whether or not you get some sort of recount or who ultimately wins that. Ohio is fascinating. Republicans hold down here around Cincinnati. They hold here around Columbus, Ohio, and they hold up in the Northeast as well, and I talked about the governor as well. We could go another half hour or so. When you get a moment, we'll talk again.
We'll head back up in a bit. We have a big race call to make right here. Fox News can now project that Josh Hawley will defeat incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill. After a long-fought battle there, the incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill, who voted against Brett Kavanaugh, who tried to warm up to the president's immigration policies, talk about how she supported him. She will go down to defeat against the Missouri Attorney General. We now have a race call to make officially in Florida. And you just saw the basically victory speech from Rick Scott, but we are officially making that call. Fox News projecting that Rick Scott will beat Bill Nelson in the Senate race in Florida. That is another pickup for Republicans. That means they are +4 at this point, 52 to 44, with some races still out there. +4, they were at 51-49. You start the night. We have a race call to make in Oregon, the governor's contest there. The decision desk can now project the Democratic governor, Kate Brown, will win re-election by defeating Republican Newt Bueller, a state lawmaker. Also, we have a race call to make in South Dakota. The governor's race, Republican Congresswoman Kristi Noem will defeat Democratic State Senator Billy Sutton to succeed the term-limited Republican governor Dennis Daugaard.
Let's take a look at a race call that we can now make in the Iowa governor's contest. The Fox News decision Desk says we can project that Republican Governor Kim Reynolds will win re-election by defeating Democratic lawyer Fred Hubble. Reynolds became the governor last year when Terry Branstad vacated that post to become the ambassador to China. He, of course, was very helpful to President Trump in the state of Iowa, and now she will take that rightful place as governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. So that's another Republican governor in a very important presidential state.
This was not expected to be like this, looking at the early numbers, but look at this. You have Tony Evers up. No, now Scott Walker is up 300. 314. 6-7, carry the knot. Yes, Scott Walker up 314 votes. He is fighting for his political life as the incumbent governor. He's faced 3 elections. Remember, he faced the original election, then he had a recall election, and now this election. And he was pretty much, considered dead for a long time by a lot of experts. And now Scott Walker is up 314 votes. Check in on some governor's races. First to Connecticut. We brought you this earlier. This is really interesting. The Republican Bob Stefanowski holding on to almost a 30,000 vote lead over Ned Lamont, the Democrat there. That would be a huge change in Connecticut. The businessman Stefanowski has said he's running to change the economic situation in the traditionally blue Connecticut. Also, we have another governor's race in Georgia that we're following, and this is separating. I mean, 94% of the vote in, and it looks like Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State, is heading to a victory there.
Yeah. We have a lot of Senate battles. The president is watching closely. We're watching closely tonight. Yeah. Let's start in Arizona. This has been tight the whole way through. This is a Republican seat that might flip Democratic, but with 45% of the vote in, you can see Kyrsten Sinema, the Democrat, is trailing by 14,000 votes. So the Republican, Martha McSally, now up just by the smallest of margins.
All right, we've got some other toss-ups, Nevada and Montana. Let's start with Nevada.
Yep.
Okay, there's Nevada. So you've got the Republican there, Dean Heller. Literally, he's up, quite a couple points there, but only 22% of the precincts reporting, 45% about for Jackie Rosen, the Democratic opponent there. So things are looking in the incumbent's favor, but nonetheless,
early on,
a lot of voting results still to come in.
And we've still been waiting on Montana, where you have John Tester, the Democratic incumbent. You see right there, he's got 48.1%. He's trailing right now, 49 to 48.1, 58% of the vote in right now. This has been watched very closely. President Trump said he made it on the target list. Tester voted no, obviously, on Kavanaugh. We got a whole lot more races coming up here.
Heather, good morning to you. Yeah, across the board, a lot of these races are still too close to call at this hour, including the race for governor in Wisconsin, with nearly all precincts reporting Democrat Tony Evers is leading Republican Scott Walker by just over 1 point. Evers is already declaring victory, but Walker's campaign isn't conceding quite yet and is waiting for military ballots to be counted to see if they'll be able to request a recount. Another closely watched gubernatorial race is in Georgia. Republican Brian Kemp narrowly beat Democrat Stacey Abrams by 2 points in a heated race where Abrams was seeking to become the first African-American governor woman in the state's history and had celebrities like Oprah and former President Barack Obama campaigning with her in the race's closing days. In Michigan, Republican John James, a combat veteran who is African-American and had strong support from the president, performed better than many expected, but he came up short in his bid to unseat Democrat Debbie Stabenow.
Our next.
All right, you've been listening to Jackie Rosen. She will be the senator-elect now from the great state of Nevada. She beat Republican Senate incumbent Dean Heller. This is a rare pickup for Democrats on this night. There have been 4 Democratic seats that have been flipped by the Republicans. This is the first one the Democrats have flipped to their corner.